My name is Jason Shirka. I have the privilege of working with an organization, a clandestine, undercover, underground organization known as TLS, otherwise known as the Light System. It's all about how to have a finger in certain places to influence things and make things move, to be able to beat the monster from within. It's understanding that we have the potential within. We have the ability to do what all the great leaders and religious leaders and spiritual leaders have done in the past. A caterpillar transforms and metamorphosizes into a butterfly. That's basically shapeshifting. We call that natural. So when a human being can do something like that, for whatever reason, we call it supernatural, and it's only because we're living subnatural lives. The Bible never caused war. The religious leaders, the people that started spreading those messages through their own corrupted lens, were the ones that caused war. And right now we're going through the process of unwinding and untangling that mess, energetically speaking, to eventually get to the same point that we were at thousands of years ago, which is one world, one life, love for all, compassion and unity. That's what the age of love is, and that's where they're trying to bring us to. The reason why TLS works with these beings is because it's all bringing back universal awareness, bringing us all together. Time and space doesn't exist in the same way that it does from that perspective, from that awareness, from that consciousness. So it's a completely different way of doing things, and it starts with awareness. It's something that's beyond the laws of physics as we know them in application today. The craft becomes an extension of the operator's consciousness, and that's how they're going those distances and those speeds. I know it sounds like it's out of a movie, but these are real things. My name is Jason Shirka. Many of you may know me as the founder of Unified TV and Unified Healing. But there's a very, very exciting part of my life that I want to dive into, that I want to share with all of you. That's the fact that I have the privilege of working with an organization, a clandestine, undercover, underground organization with incredible intentions known as TLS, otherwise known as the Light System. What you're about to hear over the next few episodes may blow your mind. It's going to challenge your belief systems. It's going to break them down, and that's okay. My job is not to convince you. My job is not to persuade you. My job is to share what I've been asked to share with the world. And what you do with the information you're about to hear is completely up to you and your own free will.
So when I asked you the question about how many members there were in this organisation, it was really important to you that I understand that it wasn't just human-based members. There were extraterrestrials involved as well. So perhaps we could start this episode by delving a little bit into who these extraterrestrials are and where they're from.
Multiple different places, and I'm sure that there's many, many more that I don't know about as well. Maybe an infinite amount of different types of life in this universe. But when it comes to TLS specifically, the three main races that I know of, they call them Nashia, Sia, and Konum. Sia would be more like the Pleiadian characteristics, tall, blonde hair, beautiful eyes, beautiful like Norwegian, but like darker people. So think about it like Norwegians with a tan, if you want to, envision that or visualize that. Nashia is more like Mayan people. They're short, they're bigger boned. They don't have noses. They have two holes in their face like that. They're very hairy and they have very short attention spans. And Konum is more like a dolphin-looking, short little creature. Think about it like a gray-looking extraterrestrial, only with a thick neck and a dolphin face coming out. And everyone has different characteristics on their planet, but they all have the same mission in terms of why they're here and why they come. And again, that goes back to universal awareness. So the reason why TLS works with these beings is because it's all bringing back universal awareness, bringing us all together, and they work directly with them in New York City in their headquarters. You will see these beings there. They're literally in some of those offices, getting briefed, in some cases going through transitions. When I say transitions, we're talking about not shape-shifting as most people think about it, like boom. We call it holographic shape-shifting. So TLS will either teach or guide that being how to move from one form to another form. It usually takes a span of about 12 months. And they literally have to learn how to change their density from one form to another. So imagine me becoming less dense until I get so less dense that I can shift my form, and then I re-densify, become dense again in a new form. Once you go through that process, you could switch quickly. But it takes a process to be able to go and experience that, and TLS helps with that process.
And why are they shape-shifting? What is the purpose of doing that? So that they can breathe here? Oh,
to look like a human being.
humans.
Yeah, so you need to,
Wow.
you want to live, think about it like an exchange program, okay? So, you know, us, let's say California between Florence. Now it's just Earth between Kono, Earth between, you know, Sia, whatever it may be. But you can't bring somebody from Kono and, you know, come over here on Earth and everything's going to be fine. So I hope I'm allowed to say this, but there's one guy from Kono, we call him Kevin. He looks like a tall, handsome guy with an English accent. He's part of the organization. He went through the transition, guided by TLS. So he's somebody from Kono that now lives here on planet Earth that's learning about humanity, that's learning about planet Earth. And every so often he goes and visits. Every so often he goes to see his family. And that's where crafts come in and things like that. But that's what the holographic shape-shifting would be used for.
So when you're describing shape-shifting to me right now, I guess my perception of it in the past when I've heard about it is 1 minute I'm Serena, 35 seconds later I'm a reptile, you know, a reptilian. To me it seemed very quick, whereas I feel like the process you're describing would be that they'd go and sit in an armchair and shape-shift over a period of several hours, and now they're in human form and then come over?
That's holographic shape-shifting. The shape-shifting you're talking about, my mentor's boss has that ability. It's something in your DNA. You have to first have it. Like if I don't have it in my DNA, I will never be able to be taught how to do it. But my Ray's boss knows how to do that. She's a great woman. She has incredible intentions, and she uses that for different purposes. What's interesting when it comes to that type of shape-shifting is you will always retain your consciousness, but you'll be able to take a different form. The only thing I know that she can't shape-shift into is a sea creature. She can't turn into like a fish or a shark. She could do, you know, a dog, a cat, whatever it will be. Let's say a cat, turn into something like that, become somebody's pet that you need to spy on, and understand what they're talking about to be able to gain intelligence. Come back to the organization and give that back. I know it sounds like it's out of a movie, but these are real things.
Yeah, that sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And it also, I find that quite terrifying, really, you know, the fact that, you know, at any given time, you know, you could be in the presence of a highly sentient, intelligent being and just be completely oblivious to it.
Well, it's not even, again, I don't like putting anybody on a pedestal because she's a great individual. There are many great individuals out there. So if you want to call her, you know, highly evolved and all that.
I mean, highly evolved as opposed to the cat that she's become.
Sure, yes, absolutely. Where there's a different consciousness within that vessel. What I never understood was if you see them shapeshift, the clothes disappear. I don't know how that works.
Kaboof. And interesting too, because matter, you would presume if you were as large as you are, then you could only shapeshift into like a, you know, extremely large dog or a pony or something like that. No, but you're sort of suggesting that they could shapeshift into a mouse?
Let's go to science for a second. You know that 99.99% of an atom is not matter.
It's space.
You could turn into much smaller than a mouse if you wanted to. You just need to know how to manipulate energy in that way. It's all a game of energy. It's understanding how to move things.
Keys. Actually, I'm going to ask another question first. So, you know, what you're suggesting is that these beings from other planets have come here, shapeshifted into humans, and they've joined the TLS crew that are human, and they're here to try and help humanity, right? like help humanity move forward in certain ways and improve certain circumstances.
In a way, it's really helping themselves. We see it as extraterrestrial life and humanity. They see it as one unit, one body, universal awareness.
Yeah, we're the lazy brother with one eye missing, and
if there's a problem in one part of the universe, it's to their best interest to fix that because it will impact them.
But my question to you is, are we humans, members of TLS, then hopping in spacecraft and flying to SEER and other places and contributing to their communities and to their worlds?
They don't need it that much. They're already there. They're coming to help us elevate because, again, if we're not elevated, they have a problem. When you're in a place of universal awareness, you feel the African child starving. You feel the Indian kid in poverty. You feel all those things. Just like if I take a hammer and break your leg, it's going to hurt. Now, imagine you had an infection in your pinky toe and you're like, it's far from my brain. It doesn't really matter. Well, it's the equivalent of saying, United States to China, or Earth to Tsia, or whatever it may be. Time and space doesn't exist in the same way that it does from that perspective, from that awareness, from that consciousness. So it's a completely different way of doing things, and it starts with awareness.
Side question. When you talk to anybody about extraterrestrials visiting Earth, they're always here to help us. Are we really at the bottom of this goddamn galactic food chain, or are there any other civilizations out there that need help from us or from these beings as well?
All the extraterrestrial life out there with an interest of coming here, they're all looking for one very particular thing. Forget about the selfless acts that we spoke about. There's something that they want, but they can't get it without our help. And that goes back to what we were speaking about with the codes within the Bibles. Forget about religion. Don't think about it as religion. Think about it as a book with codes. The Torah, the Old Testament, is a book with codes. The New Testament is a book with codes. The Quran is a book with codes. All these things, especially if we go to the Old Testament in the Hebrew language, it's literally numerology. There are numbers that allow you to do certain things. One side topic real quick to give you more in-depth understanding of what I'm talking about is there is a book, I think Greg Braden speaks about it, called Sefer HaYetzirah. Sefer HaYetzirah in English is called the Book of Creation. It's believed to be written by Abraham. Nobody really knows who wrote it, but TLS uses certain parts of that book to do things like manipulate the weather in a positive way. If somebody's going to come and try to create a natural disaster that's man-made, the way that they would go about stopping it is using Sefer HaYetzirah.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there, because this is just crazy. Okay? Now, you're basically saying that on Earth, we've got several books that have these trippy codes in them that are so special and life-changing that extraterrestrials are coming here from other planets to try and access these codes. So the question is, who the fuck wrote the codes and hid them in these books?
It's a good question. I don't know.
And how do they know about the fact that we have these codes?
Well, thousands of years ago, when they were able to do things that we have no idea how to comprehend today, like when they built pyramids and aligning them with stars and doing things that are way beyond our comprehension, how were they able to do that? You're talking about a different society, a different civilization, a different way of thinking about things. I'll give you one little cool thing about the language that, in this case, I'm more proficient in the Old Testament because that's what I was taught through. But again, forget about religion. The Hebrew language is not a language that was created. It was a language that was discovered. What do I mean by that? English was created. It's arbitrary. It's based on absolutely nothing, but we created it. Hebrew is based on numerology. It's mathematics. Mathematics is the basis of all creation as we know it. So that's why you can actually speak things into existence. The term abracadabra, that's from Aramaic. Okay? So that's like to create through dibur. Dibur is to speak. It's using speech, which is just sound, energy, frequency, vibration, to be able to create, to form things. And one really cool study that they did, I can try to find it for you later, is when I say the letter A out loud, if I were to map that sound onto a graph, it would be arbitrary. But when I say the letter Aleph, the sound mapped out looks like an Aleph. When I say the letter Bet, the sound mapped out looks like Bet. They knew something back then that we don't know now. And when you mix that with Gematria, which starts with Aramaic and Hebrew, It's not a Jewish language. Judaism came after the discovery of Hebrew. The pharaohs used the Hebrew language. They call it Hebrew because the Hebrews adopted it.
So you're suggesting that it's ancient, like as old as time?
It is literally creation. That is creation. It's using language to create.
Kind of like the Fibonacci code in a way? Like is there...
It's mixed into there. It's mixed into there with certain ratios,
but,
like
I mean,
the golden ratio.
a similar philosophy. I
Sure,
guess is what
but much more expansive. It's literally a language that creates because it's based on the mathematics of creation.
Okay. That's a whole other topic. That's a lot. And I actually would really love to spend some time with you at some point looking at some of these texts. I think that would be really interesting. Obviously, you don't know how to decipher all of them, but anything that you do know, I think that's something that viewers would be really interested in seeing.
Let me expand on one thing. Go to Judaism for a second. I'm only speaking about this because I've seen it done. Religious Jews, and I'm not by any means religious, but religious Jews would wear something called tefillin. It's spelled T-E-F-I-L-L-I-N. Okay? Looks like a black box on your arm and a black box on your head. It's used for prayer. It's used for meditation. It's used to connect in the morning when you do your morning prayers, primarily worn by men. Most people use that as a religious object. Let's go to somebody like Ray. Ray will wear them on both hands, and he'll use the power within the codes because within each box there's an order of letters, which is an order of numbers, which has a certain power. And if you know how to use that, suddenly it goes from a religious object to a form of technology.
Do you use them?
Yes, I use them for meditative purposes. I put it on every morning with the exception of Saturday. Every single day I do that as my morning meditation.
What do you mean you put it on?
You
physically
Yeah.
wear
It's like a box on your arm, and you wrap it 7 times around here, and then there's a certain formation on your hand. And then there's a box on your head, and there's like 2 things that come down here. And each box holds certain letters in there in a specific order. So he would use that to do things like levitation. It's using the energy of the letters through their numbers, which is power in and of itself, as a form of tapping into that energy to do things like telepathic communication, levitation, and so on. As you become more advanced, you don't need things like that. But somebody like Ray would need to use that, in his case, on both arms.
And so do you have, this is a modality that you've been able to pull out of these teachings and use at home. I could do it. Are there other modalities like that you use right now that you could share with other people?
So in addition to the tefillin that I was explaining, there are other, if you want to call them modalities, I would say, ways of life. So how are you eating? What type of food are you consuming? What type of music are you listening to? Binaural beats, things that a lot of people know, they're free. They're open to absolutely everybody. Daily meditation, de-stressing 2 times a day. I'm going to say something that sounds a little crazy, but one of my mentors that are above Ray is about 430 years old. He's a human being. He's a physical person.
Now, who you've seen?
5 times I've met him. He's somebody, now we communicate differently, but yes, 5 times I've met him. And he's a very, very powerful human being. Now, a lot of people say, how do you know he's 400 plus? Well, he doesn't have a birth certificate. So how am I so sure that something like that is credible? Well, if you see the other types of things he can do, the age becomes, child's play. But let's, again, go through logic for a second, and then I'll explain the way that he lives. Okay?
Was there like a DNA intervention from the extraterrestrials?
No.
He's just like a regular human that's...
Listen, let's go back. Right now, the average, people think that we're living longer now than we did in the past. That's not true. It's not true. Life expectancy increased. Lifespan, there were more, they call them centurions. Centurions are people that live over 100. There were more centurions 50, 60 years ago than there are now. What changed is life expectancy and the average lifespan, because more people are living till 80 now. More people are living till 85. 100 years ago, what would people die from? It wasn't cancer. It was some sort of infection that we didn't have antibiotics for. It was some sort of natural disaster that wiped somebody out. It was some sort of animal that came and killed you, whatever it was. But there were people living, if you want to go to the Bible, I look at the Bible as a history book, not a religious book. They say 900 years old, 950 years old. And anytime I speak to a rabbi about that, their response is, no, they counted time differently. And I didn't have an answer to that until I read this book twice. And I said, well, wait a second. I want you to explain one thing to me. Abraham and Sarah, according to the story, right, historically speaking, Sarah couldn't have babies. Eventually, the angels came and they blessed her. That's how the story goes, blah, blah, blah. But it specifically says that the angels came and blessed Sarah, and within 1 year, she had a baby. Now let's think about that for a second. Within 1 year could mean whatever anybody wants to define it as. But you know what didn't change since then? The fact that it takes 9 months to have a baby. They counted years the same 3,000, 4,000 years ago than we do now. And they were much more advanced than we are right now. So saying that somebody, forget 400, there's somebody in the organization that lives in Japan that's 620, I think, 617, something like that. They're old. How do they live that long? Well, the way that they live is de-stressing. They don't sleep a lot, by the way. They sleep maybe 2-3 hours a night. They eat very, very little. And when they eat, it's only raw, vegan food, but only raw food. By hand. If they're going to eat with a utensil, it's only wood.
I mean, you're describing something similar to what, the Tibetan monks do. Maybe not 400 years, but they certainly live into their mid to late hundreds, some of them. So
I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are lying. Because if somebody was there publicly coming out and saying, I'm 400, the first thing that's going to happen is the government's coming and taking you over. There's no reason to come out and say that other than look at me. Those people are spiritual beings. They're spiritual people. They do things behind the scenes, like the person I'm speaking about.
So circling back to extraterrestrials, again, you've kind of explained that they've come here, they shapeshift, they live among us for certain periods of time, assisting with the TLS program. Do the humans ever have the opportunity to travel in craft to their planets to learn firsthand what's going on over there? Talk to me a little bit about that.
So I haven't had that privilege yet. Hopefully one day I will. It's all, is it relative to your job, your mission, what you're here to do? Ray has had training on different planets. Now the question is, how do you go and do something like that? To go off planet, it's a dangerous endeavor. Your body is going to have to be prepared.
Well, I mean, the government, talks about these 5,000 kilometre, these 5,000 mile an hour
no.
UAPs flying around, and saying that if a human was in one of them, you would basically be liquefied. So, what's going on with these craft? Are they interdimensional? How are humans able to travel in them?
Yeah, so we're talking about something that's much faster than 5,000 miles per hour. You're talking about something that transcends the speed of light. It's something that's beyond the laws of physics as we know them in application today. The way that it works basically is, number one, for a regular human being, they would need to go through training and preparation. So generally there's something you would need to drink. Based on where you're going, the drink will be different. So if you're going to planet X, it will be drink A. If you're going to planet Y, it'll be drink B, whatever it may be. So that's how that whole thing works. But in terms of how the craft works, because this is an important feature of it, when you go in, it's not, a bunch of buttons and all that. First of all, there's a field in New Jersey that they use. They have fields all over the world. There's a field, a big open field in New Jersey that they use to go in and out. When the craft is landed, think about it like Men in Black. There's like, when it's hot, it's like wavy.
What do you mean go in and out? Sorry, are you talking about like jumping through the ground in and out? Or like
No.
That's just a landing?
In and out of the planet.
Right, but that's just a landing area.
Correct.
Right,
Landing,
okay.
if they need to pick something up.
I'm just asking because, with the crop circles that they have around America and in the UK, they say that the craft go through.
I don't know anything about crop circles.
Okay.
That's out of my scope. But when it comes to that specifically, the way that they work is the craft becomes an extension of the operator's consciousness. So number one, the operator needs to have an awareness or a consciousness that completely defies the laws of physics as we know them today. Once that becomes a thing, and once that becomes a reality, you have to go through training for something like that. Think about it like this. You don't always have to touch it, but imagine touching like a glass crystal panel in front of you, whatever it's made of. You put your hand on it, it lights up. As that happens, you are now connected through the power of thought to the craft. The craft becomes an extension of the operator's consciousness. And through the power of thought, which is faster than the speed of light, the speed of thought, now you're talking about quantum physics.
Kind of like those gaijins in that movie. Pacific Rim, when they take over those enormous robots and they
I've never seen them.
Oh, well, you should watch it.
I should watch
It's a similar thing. There's like a neural link between the two.
Yes, so there's some sort of connection that they establish through the power of thought and now the speed of thought.
So are these craft like more organic than
No.
metal? No.
Okay. Metal, crystal, glass. So the outside can be made of, I don't know what metals they are. It could be a different metal from somewhere else, maybe a different makeup. I have no idea. I've seen shows where they've spoken about different makeups of elements that don't exist here on planet Earth, but I'm not, proficient enough to speak on that. What I could tell you is the craft becomes an extension of the operator's consciousness, and that's how they're going those distances and those speeds. It completely defies the laws of physics.
So you're saying that the operator is basically saying, I want to get from planet Earth to Sia in 3 minutes.
Whatever. Yeah,
Let's go.
I'm not the operator, so I don't know how to do that, but yes, exactly. What I know is that
so they
it's
could
done.
basically, with what you're saying, they could go anywhere, as fast or as slow as they wanted.
Of course. And there is
But
no.
then how do we, so I understand this drink, but is the purpose of the drink to somehow like prepare the body's physicality so that it doesn't turn into goo?
So you don't break something, so you don't disintegrate, so you can handle the energy that you're about to move through. It's all in terms of energy and vibration.
It's almost
That's how
like
these
a
things
manual
work.
shapeshift in a way.
In a way, but it can take time. Sometimes, like Ray, in some cases, needs to drink for 30 days straight. In other cases, needs to drink for 7 days straight. In some cases, he gets very nauseous throughout the process. But if you want to go, you got to do that.
So, we can use Ray as an example. We're on another planet now. How is he surviving on the physical planet? It's one thing to be in a craft, a controlled environment, but now he's walking around. How does he do that?
That's what the drink is for.
So the drink basically allows you to exist on that particular planet, whether even if there was no oxygen or if their gravity was, 50 times heavier than ours.
Yes, but in some cases, and this is where it gets weird, they can go with consent and take over a body of an individual on that planet. That's something that's agreed upon already in advance.
Oh, just briefly inhabit.
Yeah, it's
body.
Going and taking over that body to be able.
Into it.
Yeah, so you're you do your thing and you come out.
Yeah, right.
This sounds crazy. I'm like listening to it from the outside. And again, remember, I come from like a very normal world. So this was very hard for me to start speaking about in the beginning. And that's why I always try to ground it back, because I know.
I don't know though. I'm gonna throw you a bone because I'm sitting here the skeptic. But I've spent time with people that channel extraterrestrials, and their consciousness moves out of the way so that the extraterrestrial could drop in, and that includes being able to move their limbs and control their voice and even the tone of their voice and things like that. So do I think that it's crazy? No. I mean, we see it on planet Earth when mediums are channeling spirits in brilliant ways that are incredibly convincing. So I think that that's probably more plausible for me than drinking some sort of magical drink that's going to then make your human body's always going to be your human body, right?
Will it be?
Ooh.
I don't. Why are you limiting it to that? Why can't your body change just like your body can change through your thought? Which it can. You can literally change the density of your body through thought. Why can't I use certain herbs and mixes of certain herbs, which are energies and frequencies in and of themselves, to be able to create a different combination of how your body is made up of? Now, to me, it makes sense. That's why I speak about it. But I'm totally conscious of the fact that some people look at me and they're like, this guy's a schizophrenic man. That's part of the job.
Well, I mean, like the story that you're telling so far, and we're halfway through this series, is fantastical. But, like, I know you, and I think that's where I'm having a lot of conflict right now, because you're not someone that lies. You're certainly not someone that makes up stories or needs to make up stories. You have everything to lose and nothing to gain. So yeah, I've got this like pulling sensation within me, because part of me is like, really? But then the other part's like, well, as if he would lie.
That's why I asked you in the beginning, are you ready to face the limitations of your own belief systems? Because that's what I had to go through.
Yeah, I can feel my brain, my gray matter, like pulsating and flexing.
What you're feeling now, I felt with Ray until I had more of my own experiences. I totally understand. That's why my job, I never try to convince or persuade. I could speak to somebody, they say there's something wrong with you, I say, God bless you and I love you. People in my own family. They didn't want me to work in the family business when I started. Now I left, but they didn't want me to work in the beginning. They said, listen, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, we need to distance ourselves from this.
We don't know if, you're trustworthy to be dealing with our money. I said, okay, I'm just gonna continue.
I'm going to ask you 2 more questions. With these extraterrestrials, like more and more now we're seeing like literally millions of people coming forward saying they're seeing lights in the sky, UFOs that can't be explained. Extraterrestrials are seemingly turning up in people's backyards. People that claim to have telepathic communication with extraterrestrials is just like literally in the tens of thousands, if not millions. Clearly, contact on a mass scale is imminent. They're coming. When? Like, what do you think is happening? Like you've got a front row seat right now. You're like communicating with these extraterrestrials, or at least your mentor is. Are they coming?
First of all, they're here. Question is, when will it become more public? And the answer is very simple. It's up to us. When we're ready to receive something like that, when it no longer becomes a major significant interference with our own free will, and we dictate and declare we're ready, they'll show. They're here. They've been here for a very, very long time.
But have you heard anything? Like, do you feel that it's imminent? Do you think that it's going to happen soon?
I believe within the next, personally, by 2048, I think it's going to happen. I believe it's going to happen sooner, within the next probably 7 years or so. I believe it's going to happen, but only based on where I'm seeing people are at, right? Because that's how I dictate what I believe.
So the more we evolve, you think that
it's all based on ascension,
the quicker they'll come.
100%.
And is that because they don't want to come here if the whole world's going to freak out? Like, what's the hesitation in not just coming now?
It'll create a world war. Forget about we the people. Talk about the elites for a second in power. The extraterrestrial life and technology is a huge threat to the richest families and individuals in the world. You think those families are just going to sit down and say, okay, guys, go for it. They're afraid of retaliation. So it needs to be done. It's almost like when there's a hostage situation in a bank. You're not just going to go guns blazing. You have to do it the right way, sometimes slower, to be able to save the people in that building. So it's a similar situation to avoid retaliation. That's their main concern. Same thing with TLS.
Yeah, so apart from coming here and having, these clandestine meetings with humans, are the ETs doing anything else here?
Again, it's a big question. It ties to, the first thing that comes to mind has to do with operations that went on, it was 2020, 2021, a little bit of 2022, but mainly 2020, having to do with the underground tunnels and operations having to do with...
Hold up. What are you talking about, the underground tunnels?
Again, a whole other conversation. We'll dive into it, and I'll give you the whole story on who they are and what they're doing there.
Subscribe.